Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Secret Sunday session. Today I am joined by Corey Thompson, who was a previous NRL player that is now retired from the game and has moved into coaching as well as taking on some public speaking opportunities in this space and helping youth in the area. Now, we are very grateful to have Corey on here today to share his story, as well as what he's learnt through his playing career. And as we always like to start, I don't like to sit here and talk about your achievements and what you've done. But for those people that don't know who you are, Corey, who is Corey Thompson and what does he do with himself?
My name's Corey Thompson. Currently, I'm a rugby league coach at Keebra Park, and in my days off, I do a bit of youth work. That's me at the moment, still trying to find that next life goal after retiring, which last year was pretty hard, being my first year out of being a professional athlete, but I'm just taking it day by day so far.
Mm. And we talk about your career being a professional athlete in NRL. Now, you entered the game quite young. Why did you want to start playing rugby league?
Yeah, so I originally started playing when I was six up in Brisbane. I wanted to start when I was five, but mum decided I was too small and I played T-ball for a year. This is the first year that I haven't played some sort of rugby league since I was six.
Wow.
Um, I got into it just purely much because I loved it. All my friends did it. My father played, so it was probably sort of a back-ended dream of his to see his son play rugby league. But I was fortunate enough to be, fairly good at it. So I was lucky enough to make a career out of it after playing it for the fun of it for so long.
Mm. And that's the thing, I think there comes a point with a lot of young players that you're playing it for fun, you're playing it with your friends, and then it does start to get a little bit serious. Do you remember a point in your career when you started to take it a bit more seriously and think I could have a shot at this?
Yeah, I was pretty old compared to some boys that get a shot at it. I didn't go to rugby league high school like Palm Beach or Keebra, but I started playing, sort of at a high level when I was 16, and a manager approached me and he asked if I wanted to go to a bigger club because I was playing at Maracavad and it was a great club with all my friends that I grew up with since I was six, and I agreed to it, but I forced one of my other mates to come with me from the club, and he didn't end up making a career out of rugby league, so he was a bit annoyed that I forced him to follow me, and I ended up playing at South Acacia Ridge in the under 18s, and we ended up winning the comp, and it just went from there. I sort of went from playing for the love of it to having that belief in myself, that hey, maybe I can compete with the boys that are 20 kilos heavier, that have made the Queensland teams, that have made the Australian sides, and I really just kept playing for the love of it. And slowly, I started to get more recognition, and then phone calls would happen, and then next minute, I signed with the Bulldogs for 3 years, and the rest is history.
Mm. Do you remember that moment that you got that phone call or were recognized to come and join the Bulldogs?
Yeah, I remember I was playing at East, and I've had a really good year at East Tigers. Well, they're now Brisbane Tigers in the Queensland Cup, and they rewarded me by sending me down to Melbourne to do a preseason with the NRL team, which was, I was terrified. I was, training with Billy Slater and Cameron Smith and all them, and I ended up getting sent back to the Queensland Cup side because their salary cap was full. And I played 2 years, and then my manager called and he goes, "Oh, the Bulldogs want to meet you." So I flew down to Sydney on Saturday, met with the Bulldogs, and then I moved to Sydney on Tuesday. I'd never been to Sydney before in my life, so I flew back to Queensland on Saturday, then drove back to Sydney on Tuesday morning to begin my career. And
Mm.
yeah, I spent 10 years.
Wow, were you terrified at all, especially moving to a
Yeah,
big
so
city?
I got put in, like they call them, like Bulldogs houses. So just five young boys that have moved from interstate. They just get thrown into the same house, fend for yourself. You get your training schedule, and you just pretty much is the best that you can do. And I remember my room that I was given was in the shed, single bed in the shed, nothing luxurious about it, and had to go to training from there. So the first stage wasn't really glorious at all. It was sleeping on single beds in the sheds, going to training tired, coming home exhausted and sore, and just repeating that until it became normal.
Wow. At any stage, did you just want to give up and just go, I just want to
No,
go
no,
home?
never. Like I said, I always played for the love of it, and now that the love of it got me the chance to do it for a career.
Mm,
So I've really embraced the hard work and the ups and downs and the setbacks and whatnot. I sort of thrived in that environment purely because I never lived it growing up as a kid. I didn't make rep teams. I didn't go to a rugby league school, so all that was new to me. And I was given an opportunity, and I just told myself I was never going to let go of it.
mm. And I mean, you would have had to grow up quite quickly. I mean, moving, as I said, interstate and then into a house and then a single bed by yourself, having to look after yourself and turn up in the best state that you can be at still quite a young age. How do you manage that and take responsibility of your life when you are so young?
Yeah. So my diet at the house wasn't the best. It
Mm,
would be noodles, soft drink, because I came from living with my parents straight down to living by myself. And I was lucky enough that we got fed at training. So we
mm,
got fed a healthy lunch. All the nutritionist was there, the proteins and everything. It was just before I got there and when I got home is when I struggled the most with my diet. So home would be, for dinner would be 2 minute noodles and whatever stuff that would be, and most of the time I'll just skip breakfast and just go straight to training. So I think I was lucky enough with the struggle that my laziness helped me. um, so I got away with a bit with the preparation and living away from home.
your laziness helped you in other areas that gave you the motivation to turn up to training at least.
Yeah, yeah. So all my focus was in training, and I couldn't be bothered to make sure that I had a dinner. As long as I went to sleep with something in my belly, then I knew I'd be all right for the next day.
Mm. Do you think that messaging has changed now, though? Because we now look at the way that they are trying to help players in terms of their health and their nutrition and their sleep. Do you think that is now changed in the sense that players are more educated and are being looked after probably a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. And I think being as I got older, I got more aware of it. When I moved out of the player's house, and I had to sort of, really meal plan myself, I got better. But definitely now there's more of a presence around it. So the last 5 years or 6 years of my career, we had sleep presentations before every year. We had nutrition presentations, we had recovery presentations. So all the information's presented to you. It's still up to the players whether they want to take that on board or not. It's probably why the average career is so short,
Mm,
because you do need more than just pure talent to survive
mm.
as an athlete.
And that's what I'm thinking, you present all this information to young players and we all know it. There is a certain degree where you kind of don't take it in unless you're ready or you're at that stage. And I can just see heaps of presentations going on, probably daily, weekly, and just going straight over the players' heads because you just want to play football.
Yeah, definitely. And I was probably still guilty of it when I was 30, but young boys think they're invincible.
Mm,
They don't need to sleep. They don't need to eat properly. Why do I need to do that when I'm an elite? With the boys think, when I'm only here because of football. Why does all that help me? And you see the boys that have such a long career, they're invested into the recovery, the sleep, the nutrition, the mental work, the visualization. They're the boys that have such long careers because they invest more than just their talent. They when they're away from training, they also continue to do the work.
mm. And we did mention that a lot of the time in the NRL, sometimes the careers are quite short-lived. And I believe that can take a toll on players as well. As you said, you started playing when you were 6 years old. You've devoted your whole life to rugby league and then to just have that stop. How did that play on not only yourself, but your mental health coming away and trying to figure out, well, who am I without this sport that I've been
Yeah.
identified as?
And I was a lucky one. I got to play for 10 years 180 games between here and England, and I retired on my own terms. I never had any serious injuries. The worst I got were both my ankles have wires through them, and I got like a metal plate in my hand. And I was lucky enough that I never did any major knee ligaments or anything like that. And it still hit me so hard the day that I called it quits. And people ask why, and I always say, like, imagine if you had, like, when you were younger and you wanted to achieve something in life, and then by the time you were 30, that life goal's accomplished. And then what other life goal, you have to figure out a whole new life goal. Um, and it was hard last year because I would go days where I'd feel good, then days where I'd feel like I wasn't accomplishing anything, um, or I didn't have that same high that I was usually felt. Because when you live your life goal, every day's a high. You run out into a packed stadium, win or lose on the weekend, and it's a high. You hit your gym PBs, or you get picked for the team after having a poor performance, and everything. There's a lot of lows, but everything involves a high. And then all of a sudden that literally just disappears. And then you have to figure out what you're doing tomorrow. What is the next stage in your life that will give you that same high? And I think it's also accepting that you won't probably ever feel that high, but finding other highs that just set, like, make you happy.
Mm,
Um, Something that I struggled with was accepting that I'm no longer that person.
mm,
Um, So that was probably one thing that I struggled the most. Like you said, is you're looked at this one person for so long, and then all of a sudden you're not that anymore.
mm. And that's for me, it's almost like you have to rediscover yourself and who you are and what you like and what you don't
Yeah,
like. And that can be scary when you are no longer a teenager and you have that freedom almost to experiment and do whatever you want. It's now there's more pressures because you are that little bit older. And I think coming out of that, a lot of players I know that I've even spoken to do feel a disconnect with who they are and their identity. And I mean, looking at that and where you're at now, have you found that you have found that place where you've found other highs in your life, or are you still working on it?
yeah. So I haven't. So I really enjoy coaching now. So I've done my level 2 coaching through the NRL, and I really enjoy teaching athletes everything that I got to learn, and seeing them smile when they score the try, or they figured out how to stop a defensive pattern, or figured out how to do something that they weren't so good at. So, like I said, you're never going to probably feel that high that you're used to, but it's also just appreciating what you got to do that not many people get to experience in their life. So that's what, sort of just appreciating what I got to do, what helps me get by, and also communicating. Like, I think communicating will help you solve 90% of the problems you'll ever face. So I was horrible at it. I was someone that bottled it inside, and then next minute the dishes were left out, and that would irritate me. So I'm still working on it. I'm not. There's no way I'm perfect. I hold things inside sometimes, but I really try to, whether they're tiny, whether they're massive, just open your mouth and say what has caused you a problem, or what has annoyed you, or what you're struggling with.
Do you think the industry, I know as we have mentioned, the NRL has changed to be more open to starting conversation with
Yeah.
players to communicate a lot better. But do you think being in the NRL space, it also encourages players to not speak up because it is very much a you got to be tough culture, you got to be strong, and that kind of does shelter the conversation a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. And I know if the boys want to get picked for that next week, they're not going to say anything. So I think I can't speak for every club, because I've only been at 3, but I definitely know boys that they might be struggling mentally, physically, and the boys that are always up and down the team in 1 week, out 1 week, that they won't say a word because they want to play that week. And they're probably scared if they say, hey, coach, I'm struggling a bit mentally. Then he'll just say, or have the week off. But they're scared if they have the week off, they'll never get the chance to come back in. So I think there's plenty of those types of players that the ins and outs that they don't want to speak that they're struggling because if they don't get picked and that they may never get another shot.
Mm. And from a coach's perspective, how do you take on if a player comes to you and says that they are mentally struggling? Will you sit them out for a week and potentially not look at them again?
Oh, I definitely wouldn't. But I really hope that no coaches would do that. But what I meant before, when if they get sat out and the person that replaced them plays really well,
Mm,
then they're not missing out because they're struggling. They're missing out because the person that got the shot played extremely well. So they're
mm,
terrified to give someone else the opportunity
mm,
in case they excel. Then they may not get in. But I really hope that no coaches would ever just drop someone because they were struggling mentally. I think that would be very bad.
And I guess then how does a player combat that? How do they be able to openly communicate how they're feeling whilst not also just hiding it because they really want to
Yeah.
play?
Well, there's at each club there's well-being officers, and they have to keep the conversations private between them and players. So I think a lot of players need to utilize that, and also try and figure out why you're unhappy. Um, you may be having problems with your partner, or you may be having problems with the house you own, or the house you rent, or the study you're doing. And I think it's up to the club to find out why that player is struggling mentally, and then take that away or change it so they can start feeling a bit better.
Mm. And during your career, did you come across anything that really impacted your mental health?
Yeah, so when I was younger, so I signed with the Bulldogs. Um, my first year, I didn't play much. My second year, I played every game, and we made the grand final. So I was on the highest of highs.
Hi.
And then the next year, for whatever reason, they bought more players that played my position. And then I was back to in and out of the team. And then at the
Mm,
end of the year, they told me that, sorry, mate, we're not going to re-sign you. And I went from, you know, believing that I was going really well, to confused of why, like,
mm,
I wasn't getting re-signed. And I ended up having to move to England for 2 years. Um, so I moved to England to 2 years to play rugby league, and I struggled massively over there. Um, the weather's horrible. Um, and I was so far away from home. I didn't know anyone in the team. Um, and the first year, I got by because everything was new, and I got to wear a jumper for 80% of the year instead of sweating like
yeah.
we do on the Gold Coast. And I got to see snow for the first time. And I was still young. I was only 25, and I really wanted to prove myself in the NRL. I didn't want this to be sort of the end of me. And um, what I love doing then, as I love doing now, is I love proving people wrong. So the people that didn't believe in me, that sent me to England because they didn't think I was good enough. Like I love proving people wrong. Um, so when I left to go to England, I'd only played 33 NRL games, and then I signed with the West Tigers and moved back to Australia, and I retired on 122.
Wow.
So that the fire, it's probably not a healthy way to live, proving people wrong, but um, it was a fire inside of me during my professional career that I loved proving people wrong, and showing them each day that I belonged where I was.
Mm,
Um, and it sort of not shielded my mental struggle, but made me use it as energy. Instead of taking the poor me approach, and struggling. I know that's probably a bad choice of words for mental health, but instead of taking the sad approach, I would really use it as fuel to say no, stuff you. Like you won't make me feel this way. I'm going to
mm,
show you that I deserve to be here.
mm,
And it really helped me throughout my whole career. It did get tiring. Like it's not very economical having that having that um, attitude, but it's something that I really loved during my playing career.
Mm. And it's so interesting because I would find that a lot of players would be in similar situations like your own when they get dropped or unfortunately have to step aside or step out of teams or get injured. How I know you said it was part of your personality, but how do players find motivation to keep going, even if it is just to prove a point, not only to other people but to themselves? How do they keep that motivation and energy and fire to keep going instead of sitting in that, as you said, like the sad or the rut?
Yeah, it's hard. It's almost impossible to coach someone to have that mindset.
Mm,
Um, like it's really hard, even at the school level. The kids that don't really have a work ethic. It's it's almost impossible to teach or coach
mm,
a work ethic. So some boys, that's why I think you see some boys in the NRL, um, they slowly disappear because, sometimes it's just not worth it. If they're from a small town and they're living in Sydney, Sydney's so expensive. And if you're in and out of first grade, not earning much money, then you're sort of just going backwards in life.
mm,
When you could be progressing forward if you know in your heart that rugby league isn't really a career for you. So I think it is very hard to naturally have that mindset of proving people wrong and doing it for yourself when it's a lot easier just to say, you know what, I played one game, I'll go work now in the workforce and um, tick that dream off.
mm. Do you think that there's a point that players should take that decision? I mean, if they have been trying for many years and say they just keep getting knocked back, I don't want to say give up because I don't think it's the
Yeah,
right word to use, but is there a time where they should start looking at alternate career paths?
I definitely think the older you get, you definitely should have a plan B. So whether that's Cert 3 or 4 in fitness or youth work or a uni degree like a teacher's degree or something like that, just so you can still achieve your dream but fall back to something if it doesn't work out. Because I think it's a crazy stat, like maybe like 2 or 3% of all the boys that play rugby league in Australia make NRL. And then, once you make it, the average lifespan's 2 or 3 years and 40 games.
Wow.
So, for athletes that invest so much in it, the average lifespan is horrible not to have some sort of plan B.
Mm. And when you were in it, we see today a lot of pressure on players and a lot of media exposure, positive and negative.
Yeah.
But somehow negative always seems to just take the limelight, which is bound to happen. Did you find the pressure at all to live up to the standards of the media and even the fans?
Yeah, like I sort of enjoyed, like, after a poor game, I would have random men message me on Instagram and tell me how shit I was. And tell me how much I wrecked their multi and told me like how I should never play football again and how much I
Wow.
suck. And I sort of laughed at it.
Mm,
Um, like I was never one of those boys that were, the Australian fullback or the high profile boys on big money because, the vultures in the fans, they come after you if you earn big money, if you don't produce the goods. So I really feel sorry for the boys that, you're not going to say no to a big contract. Like anyone in Australia will sign that straight away. So
yeah.
like it's not the boys' fault that they got offered that money.
Mm,
And then for the fans to just constantly heckle them that they're not performing, I really do feel sorry for those boys. But no majority of them don't care. But some boys struggle, really bad because it's just constant backlash. After the game, you look at your phone and you've got, 30, 40 notifications from random people you don't even know that are just abusing you. So some boys struggle. Myself, I didn't really care. I laughed at them because at the end of the day, I was living my dream while like they sort of weren't. So it
mm,
didn't bother me in any way. Like I just laughed and got on with it. And I was angry at myself for playing poorly. Like I don't need some random dude to message me on Instagram.
It's the way of, unfortunately, the 21st century is anybody can say whatever they want
Yeah.
and just
The
have
bad
no
thing,
consequence.
yeah, the bad thing about the internet is everyone gets to have their say now. And so
Mm.
um, the good people, which is good, they get to have their say, but also the naive, losers that get to chime in and just be negative every second of the day.
How do young players navigate this new digital era, especially as you said, when a lot of clubs are taking on young players and giving them trials and jumping them into games and sometimes throwing large amounts of money at them? How do you navigate that negativity and be able to switch off and disconnect as a
Yes.
young player?
Um, it's hard if you're not naturally good at disconnecting. We have seminars every year about social media and bullying, and they teach us not to go back at the people.
Mm,
So they teach us that, and also just utilizing, like we said before, like talking, communicating if this person's a problem. Because if you save the messages that people are sending you, the club sends them to the police, and then the police track them down and get them for online bullying. So there are protocols that the boys can follow. If they speak up, they can send the screenshot straight to the club, and then the club inform the police. So it's all about just letting the young boys know what to expect. It's not, even though you're living, your life goal. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are some bad sides to living it. There's plenty of perks, but there are a couple of negatives that come along with it.
and do you think, with that, even in the space that you are in now with coaching, that the game has changed a lot and it is affecting players differently to maybe how you were growing up?
Yeah, I feel like, well, being at Keeper, we had 15 of our top 30 go into an NRL system last year, and um, I feel like the love of the game isn't really there. It's the pressure of making it
Mm,
that that is so young these days. Like I remember when I was 18 years old, I was playing for the love of it. And
mm,
some of these boys that are 18, if they don't have an NRL deal, they feel like they failed,
mm,
or they haven't made it. And I still have to remind them daily that you don't have to make it. Like at 18 years old, I know you see your teammate walking around with their NRL bag on, and they're telling you how good it is, and you don't have that, and you feel like you aren't there. But just reminding them daily that you definitely should not give up. And I like to use examples. I was 22 when I debuted, which is, for rugby league players that isn't young. One of the boys I grew up with, he debuted when he was 25, and he went on to play State of Origin and Indigenous All Stars. So I like to use examples of boys that are currently playing, so that they have someone to look up to. Not everyone is that next 17-year-old sensation that gets big dollars. So if I can use examples of boys that aren't that person, then they sort of have someone to look up to, or know they can just research that player's path and realize that it's okay not to be there right now.
mm. And comparison is such a hard thing in the world that we're living in today. As you said, the simple
Definitely, yeah,
things of someone turning up to training with their gear on or scrolling through social media and another young all-star has made it. It's so much pressure on young kids that they have to do it now. And as you said, when they don't, it's almost like they have failed. And how
yeah,
do they navigate those feelings? I know we've mentioned, talking about it, but sometimes it gets to a point when you're constantly reminded of it,
yeah,
you can't escape that feeling. So how does someone navigate that or be able to believe in themselves to filter out the noise?
yeah. I sort of like to, during my playing career, would set like goals. And I had yearly goals, but if you just have yearly goals, it really plays with your head, because you feel
Mm,
like you aren't getting there after a month. So, I like to have a yearly goal, but then also like monthly, weekly, and daily goals. And they're not all I'm going to win the gold medal goals. Your daily goal could simply be I'm going to not drop a ball today, or I'm going to do my fitness test 10 seconds quicker. And it could be just as simple as your diet goals or make my bed in the morning for the whole week. And if you do that for 7 days, making your bed, you feel that accomplishment on Sunday, and sort of just making you. And your bigger goal may be, I want to make a Queensland Cup training team in a year. And then what do you have to do monthly, weekly, daily to achieve that goal? And if you eat like a slob for a year, are you going to get that training gig? You're probably not. So just like teaching the young boys to make goals daily, monthly, weekly, yearly, whatever it is, so that they have something that they can tick off that is short term that lead to their big goal. And goals, you can't compare your goals to others because no one else knows them except for you. So that's a great way of teaching young people how to stay on course and not get so sidetracked and comparing themselves to others.
I love that. And even with distractions, I know that sometimes in the playing industry is that you, as a young person, have a lot of distractions, whether it be family, whether it be girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever it is, it's always that distraction to pull you away from the game. And if someone is really devoted to the game but keeps getting pulled away or sidetracked, how do they stay on course? How do they keep looking after themselves and reminding themselves that in order to reach that goal or to go where they want to go, they have to stay on track?
Definitely. And a lot of people don't realize how much you have to sacrifice. So, say if you're from Brisbane, there's only one team in Brisbane or two now. So, there's a great chance you're going to have to leave all your friends and family to go, achieve your dream. And then once you get there, are you going to go party with the older boys that have been playing for 8 years that know what it takes, or are you going to say no and stay home because you need to prepare? Are you going to eat right? Are you going to stay away because there are people that want to bring you down, that want to utilize your name for their own benefits. So there's plenty of things that you have to sacrifice and be careful of. And I think it's just, there's always the party animals in the team that are always up for a good time, but it's finding those boys that are on the same path as you to hang out with, to take inspiration from, just until you find your feet, or you're a bit more established, or you're a bit more older and smarter, so you can go out and not get into trouble when uh, it's time to go home. So we always got told nothing good ever happens after midnight. So um, if you're out and about with the boys, at 11:30, 11:45, it's time to go home.
I love that. I think that should be applied to everyone. And then looking at your career, is there anything that you would change?
Um, I would have loved to debut earlier.
Mm,
But in saying that, I got to have a 10-year career instead of the average four. I played 180 first grade games instead of 40. So, I wouldn't change anything about it. I left without any serious injuries. I can still play football. I can still play touch, socially on a weeknight. I ticked every goal that I ever set for myself while I was playing. So I was able to retire with a smile, but it was still probably the hardest thing I've ever experienced, that transition,
mm.
um, leaving.
What do you think was the hardest thing to let go of?
The structure that I was so used to. So for 10 years, I knew when lunch was, I knew when gym was, I knew when we were playing, I knew when holidays was, I knew when payday was. Um, and it's crazy. So, say if we needed to go to the hospital, we would literally just call our team doctor and they would book us into the private hospital straight away. We wouldn't wait for surgeries. We wouldn't wait for antibiotics. We wouldn't wait for MRIs.
Mm.
Everything was handed to you for 10 years, and then Monday morning I woke up and, and nothing was handed to me anymore. So um, that's something I struggled with, and like we said before, the acceptance that I'll never be that person again. I'll never feel those highs again. That's something that I'll probably always struggle with,
Mm.
but the acceptance of being all right with it is something that I'm still learning to
Mm.
live with.
And do you have a highlight of your career?
So yeah, so I played for the Indigenous All Stars, and got to represent that side of the family and playing in the NRL Grand Final in 2014. So those were my two highlights, and then also getting to my 100th NRL game is something special.
How do you explain? I know we've mentioned that a lot of these are highs and it's an ongoing high, even though there's lows in there. But those moments must have been out of this world. How do you explain those feelings to people that have never been in those situations?
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember the grand final. You're not allowed to warm up on the field, so we got the bus in through Belmore from Belmore into ANZ Stadium, and when you're in the sheds, you just go straight down the tunnel from the side street. So you see some fans walking in. We got there early. You don't know anyone's there, and we went out while there was the first game on, and the crowd was all scattered, but you can see people sitting at the very top row. So you know, there's going to be a fair few people here. Went back inside, couldn't warm up outside, and then they told us it's time to run on. And then when we ran on, all the fire went up, and there's 90,000 people there, and it just sends goosebumps to you. Everything is terrifying in that game. Trying to catch a ball, and half the crowd's booing you and taking hit ups and whatnot. And so that was something that it like sends hair, standing
Mm.
up on the back of your neck. It's something that not many people get to experience, and I'm very lucky I got to.
I always wonder when I watch a game, do you actually hear the crowd?
So the crowds, like, you don't really look past the first 10 rows of the stand unless you like look up like that. You don't really see anyone. So anyone past the 10th row is sort of out of your eyesight.
Mm.
And you don't when you're in the game, you don't really hear anyone. Like, I'm sure fans are abusing people and whatnot, but everyone playing is so loud. Like, both sides are screaming and talking to each other about what's coming and what they need to do, that you sort of just forget anyone's even there. And then, you watch the game back on TV and you're like, fuck, there was heaps of people there. I didn't even notice or really acknowledge how many people were there.
I love that. Yeah, because I'm often watching it and obviously the camera zones out and looks at people yelling and throwing stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
do players even register that anything's
Nah, so
happening?
you don't really see a thing because it's such a non-stop game that you don't really have time
Mm.
to look around and appreciate, how many
Mm.
people came to watch your team play.
I love that. And now, lastly, what are what are the messages that you'd like to send to young aspiring players that might be in the industry of rugby league, jumping in and out of the game, don't know if they're going to make it, but just keeping at it? What would be your message to them?
Do not give up and work harder than the person next to you.
Love that. Do you think you did that during your career?
Definitely. I Yeah, so there were plenty of boys that were more talented, but I made sure that I may not have won the game, but I was definitely going to walk off the field knowing that I worked harder than you did.
Mm,
And that takes no skill. So
mm,
the world's worst football player can put in effort. So that's that's something that I like to tell the boys at Keebra.
mm. And then what would you say would be your biggest life lesson at this stage?
Oh, um, that's a good one. My
Put
life
you on the
lesson.
spot.
My life lesson maybe
That's fine. I feel like it's to be continued.
to appreciate the small things
Mm,
and not get so caught up in the big things that life can provide, and appreciate the small things that are right in front of you.
mm. That's amazing. And I think that is something that we all should take on really. And it, as you said, even those small goals, being able to really focus on them and implement them and find a reward and achievement when you do
Definitely.
accomplish those
And
things.
those small goals turn into habits. And then
Mm,
you don't need to create goals for the habits that you have. So then it
mm,
gives you more time to create other goals.
mm. It is amazing once you put in a little bit of effort and a little bit of work, how
Yes.
far you can progress and grow in life.
Yes.
I
It's
love
easier
that.
said
Thank
than done.
you. Oh, it absolutely is. But I think that if you have the motivation and if you just turn up, I feel like
Yeah.
before you know it, you one day just look back and reflect and be like, look at where I started.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Corey, for jumping on today and sharing a little bit about your story and your career and what has led you to where you are today. And good luck on the journey ahead in discovering that new person, that new version of yourself without rugby league fully in your corner.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll find many more highs that are yet to be discovered. But yeah, I think we're all on that path of just learning every day who we want to be and what version we want to turn up as, which is a life journey, not just something
Yeah.
that happens overnight.
It's never ending.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And where can people find you if they want to follow your journey or see what you're doing next?
Yeah, definitely. So I've got Instagram. It's Corey underscore Thompson 15. So that's the username.
Mm,
Um, so jump on and follow if you want to see the progression of an ex athlete that's finding his way in life.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you as well to everyone else out there for joining us for another Secret Sunday session. We'll catch you all again next time.